Where the Road Leads, Chapter 1. Pain. Pain. It was the first thing Xiao Zhan knew. For a moment he thought he was still in the hospital. Pain had been his constant companion for so many years that waking to it felt ordinary. The sharp ache in his back, the stiffness in his limbs, the familiar pounding in his chest. Pain was normal. What wasn't normal was the position of his body. His knees hurt. His knees. Confusion flickered through his foggy mind. Slowly, awareness returned. His knees were pressed against something hard. Stone. Cold stone. His palms rested against the same rough surface. Stone floor. His breathing hitched. No, that wasn't possible. For 10 years he had never stood, never walked, never knelt, never fallen. He had spent every day confined to a hospital bed, trapped inside a body that refused to obey him. Then why? A sharp crack split the air. Instinctively, he looked up. Purple light flashed. Something struck his back. Agony exploded through his body. The world vanished beneath a wave of pain. A scream tore from his throat. His entire body lurched forward. His hands slammed against the ground to stop himself from collapsing. His hands. They moved. His arms trembled beneath him. His fingers dug into the stone. He could move. The realization struck harder than the whip. His breath came in short, frantic gasps. His heart thundered. His limbs shook. He could move. He could move. He could. Still refusing to admit your mistake? A woman's cold voice cut through the chaos. Xiao Zhan froze. Memories that weren't his crashed into him. A stern woman, purple robes, sharp eyes, a spiritual weapon, crackling with violet lightning. Yu Zidian, Madam Yu, the wielder of Zidian. The memories poured into him all at once. Lotus Pier. The Jiang sect. Cultivation. Wei Ying. Wei Wuxian. He felt dizzy, as though two lives had collided. One life spent staring at white hospital ceilings, another spent running beneath open skies. Neither felt entirely real, yet the burning pain across his back certainly did. Madam Yu stood before him, Zidian coiled around her wrist. Her expression was as cold as winter frost. You've grown quite bold. Another memory surfaced. A discussion among disciples. Excitement. Celebration. Formation of a golden core. Then anger. Jiangcheng. Humiliation. Comparison. Disappointment. And punishment. Not Jiangcheng. Wei Ying. Always Wei Ying. Madam Yu's gaze sharpened. You formed your golden core before Jiangcheng. Her voice dripped with contempt. You embarrassed him before the other disciples. Wei Ying stared at the floor, not because he was submissive, because he was struggling to process the absurdity of the situation. He had died. He remembered dying. The final days in the hospital. The worsening illness. The machines. The teacher who sat beside his bed. The darkness that followed. Then this. Another strike landed. The pain snapped him back to the present. His body nearly folded. Do you think talent excuses insolence? Zidian crackled. Purple sparks danced across the stone. You exist because the Jiang sect took you in. Another strike. Wei Ying clenched his teeth. His shoulders shook. You dare humiliate Jiangcheng? Strike. You dare overshadow him? Strike. Every lash burned. Every lash hurt. And all he could think was, why? Why was she doing this? The confusion inside him slowly gave way to disbelief. Then disbelief became anger, not at the pain. Pain was familiar. Pain was nothing new. But this body could walk, could run, could climb mountains, could swim rivers, could live. Someone was deliberately damaging it. The thought made something twist painfully inside his chest. For 10 years he had dreamed of a body like this, dreamed of moving, dreamed of freedom. And here someone was treating it as something disposable. Madam Yu finally lowered Zidian. The courtyard fell silent. Only Wei Ying's uneven breathing remained. Yu Zidian looked down at him. Consider this a lesson. Her voice was cold and final. You are a servant's son. The memories supplied the familiar insult. You will never stand above Jiangcheng. Wei Ying remained silent. Not because he agreed, not because he feared her, but because he couldn't find words. The situation felt too surreal. Madam Yu took his silence as submission. Remember your place. She turned away, then paused. Without looking back, she spoke. And if I hear that you've told anyone about today's punishment. The threat hung in the air. Zidian crackled softly. I'll make certain you regret it. A few nearby servants lowered their heads immediately. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Madam Yu walked away. Her footsteps gradually disappeared. The courtyard became quiet, completely quiet. Wei Ying remained kneeling long after she left. His hands pressed against the stone. His breathing slowly steadied. The pain was still there. The confusion was still there. But another realization was beginning to emerge. Carefully, tentatively, almost fearfully, he shifted his weight. His legs obeyed. His body trembled. Not from weakness. From disbelief, he slowly pushed himself upright. His knees wobbled. His balance nearly failed. Yet he remained standing. Standing. For the first time in either life, it felt miraculous. Tears blurred his vision. Nobody was there to see them. His fingers clenched into fists. His chest tightened. The open sky stretched endlessly above him. The wind brushed against his face. He could feel it. He could truly feel it. And for the first time since waking in this strange new world, one thought rose clearly above the confusion. I can move. The thought echoed through him. Again, and again, and again. I can move. Wei Ying stood alone beneath the night sky. The courtyard had long since emptied. The servants who had witnessed his punishment had vanished, eager to be anywhere else. Even the distant sounds of Lotus Pier seemed muted at this hour. Above him stretched a sky unlike any he had ever seen. Countless stars glittered across an endless expanse of darkness. The moon hung high overhead, silver and serene. For a long moment, Wei Ying simply stared. He couldn't remember ever seeing something like this. In his previous life, the sky had always been hidden. 10 long years spent in a hospital bed. 10 years gazing through a window, yet all he had ever seen were towering buildings, glowing signs, and the harsh brilliance of city lights. Even when he looked upward, there had always been something blocking his view. Concrete, glass, steel. Never this. Never an endless sea of stars. Never a moon so bright it seemed close enough to touch. The sight made his chest ache. Not with pain, with longing, with wonder, with grief. A lifetime's worth of things he had never experienced suddenly pressed against his heart. The night breeze stirred his loose hair. He closed his eyes briefly. The accidents surfaced in his memories. Twisted metal, screaming tires. His mother's terrified face. His father's voice. Then darkness. That single moment had destroyed 2 families. His parents had died. He had survived, if surviving could even be called that. The driver of the other vehicle had lost his wife and son. Only 2 people had remained. 2 survivors carrying the wreckage of everyone else. Wei Ying remembered the man. The guilt in his eyes. The way he had paid every medical bill. The way he had spent years visiting a child who could neither forgive nor blame him. Back then, there had been nothing Wei Ying could do. No choices. No power. No escape. Just endless days trapped inside a body that refused to move. But now, his eyes opened. The stars reflected within them. What about now? Could he still do nothing? His thoughts turned toward his current situation. The memories of this body's owner flowed easily now. Wei Ying, orphan, street child. 5 years surviving alone. Hungry, cold, forgotten. Then Jiang Fengmian had appeared. A friend of his father, a rescuer, a savior, someone who had promised him a home and brought him to Lotus Pier. Wei Ying looked toward the sprawling sect complex visible beyond the trees. Warm lantern light glowed from distant buildings. A picture of peace. A picture of safety. But was it? Was this truly a home? His answer came immediately. No, a home should not leave a child terrified of punishment. A home should not require secrets. A home should not make him fear for his own body. His fingers unconsciously brushed one of the fresh welts beneath his robe. Pain flared. His jaw tightened. His thoughts returned to Madam Yu's final warning. Do not tell anyone. The words echoed through his mind. Why? Because she knew what she was doing was wrong. The realization settled heavily within him. She feared discovery. Otherwise, she would have punished him openly. She would not have chosen a secluded courtyard hidden from view. She would not have threatened him into silence. Wei Ying's gaze swept across the quiet grounds. Everything suddenly looked different. The remote location, the absence of witnesses, the secrecy, none of it had been accidental. His heart pounded, not from fear, from understanding. For the first time since waking in this body, he wasn't simply reacting. He was thinking, planning, looking for a way forward, a way to protect himself, a way to survive. His foot moved. Then another. He started toward the residential buildings. Immediately his legs buckled. A sharp gasp escaped him. Pain shot through his back. His vision blurred. He stumbled and nearly crashed to the ground before catching himself against a nearby pillar. Warm liquid soaked through the fabric of his robes. Blood. The black cloth hid most of it, but he could feel the dampness spreading across his skin. His breathing quickened. A cold wave of fear rushed through him. Not fear of Madam Yu. Not fear of punishment. Not even fear of pain. It was something deeper. Something older, a terror carried over from another life. What if he lost this? What if one day his legs stopped obeying him again? What if the damage became permanent? What if he woke up trapped once more? Unable to walk, unable to run, unable to leave, unable to choose. The mere thought made panic claw at his chest. His hands trembled. He forced himself to breathe, slowly, steadily. The fear remained, but beneath it, another emotion emerged. Determination. This wasn't the hospital. He wasn't 8 years old anymore. He wasn't trapped. Not yet. This time, he could do something. This time, he could protect himself. This time, he had a choice. Wei Ying straightened carefully despite the pain. His legs shook. His back burned. But he remained standing. And under the moonlit sky, with blood staining his robes and fear still lingering in his heart, Wei Ying made his first decision in this new life. He would not let this continue. Not again. With his decision made, Wei Ying turned toward the sect complex. One step at a time, his legs trembled beneath him. Every movement pulled at the torn flesh on his back. Every step sent a fresh wave of pain through his body. The fear lodged in his chest only grew stronger, not because of the injuries themselves, because each sting reminded him of how fragile this freedom truly was. This body could walk. It could run. It could climb mountains and cross rivers. And it could be broken. The thought haunted him as he slowly made his way through the quiet grounds of Lotus Pier. The night had deepened considerably. Most disciples had long since retired to their rooms. The pathways were nearly deserted. Lanterns cast pools of warm golden light across stone walkways and wooden corridors. The gentle sound of water lapping against the docks echoed through the darkness. Ordinarily, Wei Ying would have returned to his room. That was what was expected. That was what Madam Yu undoubtedly assumed he would do. Instead, he headed for the healer's wing. The journey felt much longer than it should have. By the time he reached the building, sweat had soaked through his robes despite the cool night air. His face had gone pale. His breathing was uneven. The medical wing was mostly quiet. Only a few lanterns remained lit. Most of the healers had already retired for the evening. Fortunately, one remained. An elderly healer sat inside the main treatment room, reviewing medical records beneath the glow of a lantern. His name was He Qingyuan. He had served Lotus Pier for decades and was one of the most experienced healers within the sect. The moment Wei Ying stepped through the doorway, He Qingyuan looked up. His brows immediately furrowed. "WangXian." The old healer set aside his brush. Concern flashed across his face. Something was clearly wrong. Wei Ying's complexion was terrible. His posture was rigid. His breathing strained. Yet what truly alarmed him was the expression in the boy's eyes. Fear. Not ordinary fear. Something deeper. Something desperate. He Qingyuan rose at once. "What happened?" Wei Ying opened his mouth, then closed it again. He didn't answer. There was no need. The old healer had already stepped closer, and immediately caught the scent. Blood. His expression changed. "WangXian." Without another word, He Qingyuan guided him toward one of the treatment beds. Only then did he notice the dark stains spreading across the back of Wei Ying's robes. His face tightened. The healer carefully helped him sit. "Stay still." Wei Ying obeyed. The old man gently reached for the blood-soaked fabric. As soon as he pulled the outer robe aside, his expression froze. For a brief moment, even He Qingyuan seemed unable to react. His hands stopped moving. His eyes widened. Shock flashed across his usually composed face. 5 lashes. 5 unmistakable marks. Purple lightning still danced faintly along the wounds. The spiritual energy lingering beneath the flesh had not yet dispersed. There was no possibility of mistake. No possibility of misidentification. "Zidian." He Qingyuan stared. His mind went blank. Then, quickly filled with disbelief. "Zidian. The first-class spiritual weapon of Madam Yu. The heirloom of Madam Yu. A weapon feared throughout the cultivation world. A weapon meant for battle. For discipline. For severe crimes. Not for this. Not for a child. Certainly not for a disciple who had only recently formed his golden core. The old healer forced himself to continue. Years of experience steadied his hands even as his thoughts churned violently. Carefully, he removed the damaged layers of clothing. The full extent of the injuries became visible. The lashes crossed nearly the entire width of the boy's back. Angry purple marks burned against pale skin. Several had split open. Spiritual energy still crackled faintly along the wounds, preventing normal healing. The sight made He Qingyuan's stomach sink. His hands paused for the briefest moment. Then he resumed his work. His movements remained gentle and precise. Outwardly calm. Inwardly anything but. What crime could possibly justify this? The question surfaced immediately, yet no answer came. Wei Ying was troublesome, mischievous, loud, exasperating. Every healer in Lotus Pier knew that. But this? This was not the punishment of a mischievous child, nor was it the punishment of a disciple who had broken rules. These were Zidian lashes, reserved for serious offenses, reserved for matters that threatened the sect itself, reserved for crimes few disciples would ever commit. And here they were, across the back of a boy who had only just entered adolescence. He Qingyuan's jaw tightened. His hands continued their work, cleaning, assessing, treating. Years of practice guided him through the familiar rhythm. Yet his thoughts remained tangled. The lingering spiritual energy left little room for doubt. There was no mistaking the source, no mistaking the wielder. The old healer carefully applied medicine to the first wound. Wei Ying flinched but remained silent. Not a single complaint escaped him. Not a single explanation. The silence somehow made the scene worse. He Qingyuan glanced briefly at the boy. Wei Ying sat quietly on the treatment bed. His face was pale, his hands clenched tightly in his lap, but his eyes remained fixed on the floor, watching, thinking, as though he were weighing something far heavier than physical pain. The healer's heart sank. Children should not wear expressions like that. Not after punishment, not after injury, not after anything. Yet somehow Wei Ying did. And as He Qingyuan continued tending the wounds, a troubling realization slowly settled over him. This was not the first time he had seen injuries hidden beneath silence, but it was the first time he had seen Zidian involved, and that made everything far more dangerous. He Qingyuan's hands continued their work, carefully spreading medicine over the angry purple wounds. The silence stretched between them. Outside, the night remained still. Only the occasional chirp of insects drifted through the open window. The healer found his thoughts returning again and again to the boy sitting before him. Wei Ying had only recently turned 10, just a child. He had arrived at Lotus Pier barely a year ago, a skinny street orphan rescued by sect leader Jiang himself. In that time, He Qingyuan had come to know him well enough. The boy was bright, energetic, mischievous, forever running into trouble. The sort of child who somehow managed to be in 3 places at once and leave chaos in all of them. And yes, he had been punished before. Everyone in Lotus Pier knew that. Madam Yu often ordered him to kneel in the ancestral hall, sometimes for hours, sometimes longer. It was harsh, but not unheard of. This, however, the healer's gaze drifted to the marks crossing Wei Ying's back. This was different, terrifyingly different. And the worst part was not the wounds themselves. It was Wei Ying's silence. No protests, no complaints, no outrage. As though he already knew speaking would accomplish nothing. As though enduring punishment was normal. The realization made something heavy settle in He Qingyuan's chest. If a child was lashed with Zidian and remained silent about it, then this was likely not the first beating he had received. The thought disturbed him more than he cared to admit. Wei Ying. The boy looked up for the first time since arriving. His eyes met the healer's. There was fear there. Not the fear of pain. Not the fear of medicine. A deeper fear. The kind that no child should ever carry. He Qingyuan's expression softened immediately. Do you want to report this? The question hung in the air. Wei Ying blinked. For a moment he simply stared, then quietly asked, report to whom? The healer froze. His hand stopped moving. To whom? The obvious answer should have been simple. The sect leader. The leadership. The elders. Someone with authority. Someone capable of intervening. Yet the answer refused to come, because the person responsible was not a disciple, not a servant, not an outsider. It was Madam Yu, one of the leaders of Lotus Pier, the mistress of the sect. The realization left a bitter taste in his mouth. He resumed applying medicine, more slowly this time, more carefully. The silence returned. Neither of them seemed eager to break it. Eventually, He Qingyuan spoke again. His voice was quieter, gentler. If you want to escape this, Wei Ying immediately looked up. I will do whatever I can. The old healer hesitated before continuing. I cannot promise miracles. His hands carefully wrapped fresh bandages over the worst of the wounds. But I will help however I'm able. For the first time, something flickered across Wei Ying's face. Hope. Small. Fragile. Almost fearful. You will? The question nearly broke He Qingyuan's heart. Not because of what was said. Because of how it was said. As though help was something uncertain. As though kindness required confirmation. Of course. The answer came immediately. Without hesitation, without doubt, He Qingyuan secured another bandage, then looked at the child before him. Tell me. His voice was steady. What do you need? The question seemed to catch Wei Ying off guard. He fell silent. His gaze lowered. The hope faded into thoughtfulness. What did he need? He Qingyuan watched him struggle with the answer. Minutes seemed to pass. The old healer continued working in silence, giving him time. Meanwhile, Wei Ying's thoughts churned. Freedom. The answer appeared instantly. He wanted freedom. He wanted distance. He wanted safety. He wanted to wake up every morning without wondering whether someone would decide to punish him. He wanted to stop being afraid every time he heard footsteps behind him. He wanted to protect the body he had only just gained. Yet other thoughts followed. Complicated thoughts. Painful ones. The Jiang family. Jiang Yanli's gentle smile. Jiang Cheng's fierce loyalty and jealousy tangled together. Even Jiang Fengmian, a man who had given him a home when nobody else would. Things weren't simple. Nothing ever was. Wei Ying knew what reporting Madam Yu could do. The consequences would spread through the entire sect. Arguments, scandal, division. Every day he had watched sect leader Jiang and Madam Yu fight. Often because of him, or at least because of what he represented. Even when he knew it wasn't his fault, guilt still lingered. His existence seemed to create conflict wherever he went. And despite everything, a part of him still cared about them, enough that he couldn't bring himself to destroy what remained of their family. The realization settled heavily inside him. He wasn't seeking justice. He wasn't seeking revenge. He wasn't seeking punishment. Only escape. Only freedom. At last, he lifted his head. His voice was barely above a whisper. I want to leave. The words felt strangely light once spoken, as though a burden had finally been given shape. He Qingyuan stared. For a moment he said nothing. Then he looked into the eyes of a 10-year-old child who had just asked for nothing more than the chance to leave. And he understood. Not everything, but enough. Enough to know this wasn't a whim. Enough to know this wasn't childish anger. Enough to know the boy had thought about it carefully. Very carefully. The healer slowly set aside the remaining bandages, then nodded. Once, firmly. Then we'll find a way.